So, all this time that we spent doing all of this work with variables and expressions and everything else, it's all been pointing to this very moment about linear equations and inequalities in one variable. Let's start our study of this. It's some pretty cool stuff, I think. And I also think that a lot of times the way teachers present it and the way kids try to learn it is not the most productive way to do it. So if you're a little open-minded, follow me on this. First off, the definition of a linear equation is something like this. Ax plus b equals c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a is not equal to 0. For example, 4x plus 2 is equal to 6. Personally, when I see something like this, I do not like it. This is a very formal math geek kind of definition. Normal people don't walk around talking like this. Here's the thing, a linear equation, all you need to know, you see the x there? That's the letter we'd be solving for. Do you see how the exponent on that x is a 1? We didn't write out that exponent. So since we didn't write it, it's a 1. It's assumed it's there, like we assume there's a 1 in front of an x if I just write an x. You see the exponent on the 1, you don't see an exponent there. That is a linear equation. Forget all the other fancy stuff that people could be telling you about it. Now, the next question I have for you is, when you go to solve one of these equations, like for example 4x plus 2 equals 6, what's really going on here? Well, in order to understand that, I think we need to take a step and ask ourselves, what is the internet? What is the World Wide Web? Now, I have a pet photography business. Actually, let's not talk about the pet photography business. Let's talk about the fact that my wife and I have miniature Australian Shepherds that we're trying to breed. And the name of our kennel is River's Rest Kennel. Now, let's say you wanted to learn all about miniature Australian Shepherds and you wanted to find our kennel, but you weren't sure of the name. You could look miniature Australian Shepherd, New York State, Catskills, Calicoon. Eventually you would find it. But when you type in what you need to know into the internet, it goes out there. And somehow this internet rifles through all of the possible websites that you could possibly have and tries to find, in order, the best solution to your problem. It tries everything out there and it comes back with the best solution to your problem. Well, that's what you do with an equation. You see, there are an infinite number of numbers in the world, kind of like there's darn near an infinite number of websites. You know, you do a search like that, it might return 90,000 to 90 million websites. There's an infinite number of numbers out there. And which one is the one that's the correct solution to this equation? Well, rather than turn around and say to yourself, now you can hear the dogs barking, there's even more. Rather than say to yourself, what's the one number that works? We need a process that goes through all the numbers out there in Numberland, all the numbers it could possibly be, to find the one and only one number for which this is true. Now, let's just say, for argument's sake, how do we possibly find this answer? Well, we need to become a detective, okay? When we become a detective, we're trying to figure things out. Who done it? Who did the crime? So I taught for many, many, many years in a town called Patchogue, Long Island, New York. And I taught in a school. I taught in the high school. I taught in the middle schools. But for a time there, I taught in the middle school part of the day, high school part of the day. And that middle school used to be the high school many years before they built a new one. And that high school had a very, very famous person who went there, and a book was written about him. The book was called Fatal Vision. It was about a Green Beret from Patchogue who, the verdict is in now, murdered his family. And it was kind of cool because I would tell the story of this Green Beret. Here's a newspaper article about it. And I would talk about how, now, first off, the murder took place in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, but the people were from Patchogue. And the book, when I read this book as a freshman in college, it really scared me because it was the first time such a heinous, horrific crime was committed so close to my hometown, Noseva. That was my dog I was talking to. So I said to myself, man, this is kind of like hitting close to home. It's pretty scary. So the story behind this murder is as follows. This guy, Jeffrey McDonald, when he went to South Ocean, he was really, really popular. He was the star on the baseball team. He was a pitcher and a shortstop. The star on the basketball team, he was a point guard. And he graduated the valedictorian. He actually went to Columbia and to another school, I think Northwestern. I'm not sure about that. And he got his doctorate. When he got his doctorate, he became a medical doctor. He felt it was important to show pride in his country, so he went to Vietnam and served as a Green Beret, which is like a Navy SEAL. He was a super successful guy and a medical doctor. He also became the doctor for the United States military boxing team. So he was a real active guy, and he was involved. And he had two beautiful little daughters. And he also had a wife named Colette. Now, Colette also went to the school I taught at, and Colette was the head cheerleader. So it was kind of like this romance drawn up in a romance novel. A perfect thing where you have the boy athlete, the girl cheerleader, and they all come together, the quarterback and the cheerleader. It's just like this perfect all-Americana thing. And then all of a sudden his family ends up murdered. And in the beginning, he claimed that he didn't do the murder. He claimed that 4 drugged out hippies broke into his home and physically manhandled him and then killed his wife and his daughters. But here's the thing that was so surprising about it is when that was attempted to be done, what happens is he supposedly had this life and death battle. Now, this is the trainer for the boxing team. This is a medical doctor. This is a Green Beret. This is everything that's out there. And he has this battle, this brawl with these 4 drugged out high teenagers. And one of them was supposed to be this really, really big guy. And you would think that he would get beat up like his family got beat up and he would get killed too. But he only had a couple of minor wounds in places where he couldn't do any real damage. But his daughters, oh my Lord, they were stabbed. I don't even want to get into how many times, but it was a lot. His wife, a lot of times. It was really, really, really bad. So in the beginning, when he claimed he was innocent, his father-in-law said, look, I've known this guy all my life. He's got to be innocent. He didn't do it. And then they went through the court proceedings, and he went through a military court, and the military court found him not guilty. But then Jeffrey McDonald went on all the talk shows. Like nowadays we have Oprah and all these other shows. Jeffrey McDonald went on these shows. Back then they were Dick Cavett and Phil Donahue and so on. And the father-in-law, as he's watching these shows, noticed that his stories changed every single time. So his father-in-law started to doubt the story. So he got really, really, really confused and concerned. He flew down to North Carolina. He went into the very room, which is what that's a picture of, where Jeffrey McDonald claimed that these hippies came in and had this big brawl with him. And the father-in-law was, he's so frustrated. He didn't know what to do. He got really, really, really upset, and he stomped his foot as hard as he could on the floor. And when he did that, birthday cards to the little baby girl fell over. And he said, oh, that guy's a liar. How in the world could you have a brawl with 4 hippies and those birthday cards don't fall down? He staged the scene. And that's what detectives do. Detectives go to the scene of the crime and they try to figure out who done it, who's the one person in the world. Well, our job, solving equations, is to turn around and say, okay, there's an equation, let's find the one number in the world. And that's where we'll pick up in just a minute.